Seventh-day Adventist Church, beloved in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this is a very urgent message, very urgent message. We're dealing with the Jesuit infiltration of the Adventist Church, Part 2. A firm stand against the Jesuits, Part 2. Beloved, we discussed the Jesuits earlier in an earlier sermon called A Firm Stand Against the Jesuits and Pope Francis earlier in Facebook and YouTube. This is a second copy, a second version of it. This is taken from Great Controversy. Again, that's Great Controversy, the illustrated edition, the section dealing with the French Reformation, the section dealing with the Jesuit order, and the green highlighted section there. And this right here is a Jesuit. This is the Jesuit orders. Of the Jesuit orders placard that they use to represent who they are in the book right here. But this is what Sister White says. She says, Ellen White says right here. She says, throughout Christendom, Protestantism was menaced by formidable foes. The first triumphs of the Reformation past, Rome summoned new forces, hoping to accomplish its destruction. At this time, the Order of the Jesuits was created, the most cruel, unscrupulous, and powerful of all the champions of popery, cut from every earthly tie and human interest, dead to the claims of natural affection, reason, and conscience, holy silence. They knew no rule, no tie but that of their order, and no duty but to extend its power. The gospel of Christ had enabled its adherents to meet danger and endure suffering, undismayed by cold, hunger, toil, and poverty, to uphold the banner of truth in face of the rack, the dungeon, and the stake. To combat the forces, Jesuitism inspired its followers with a fanaticism that enabled them to endure like dangers and to oppose the power of truth, all the weapons of deception. There was no crime too great for them to commit, no deception too base for them to practice, no disguise too difficult for them to assume. Vowed to perpetual poverty and humility, it was their studied aim to secure wealth and power, to be devoted to the overthrow of Protestantism and the reestablishment of the papal supremacy. When appearing as members of their order, they wore a garb of sanctity, visiting prisons and hospitals, ministering to the sick and the poor, professing to have renounced the world and bearing the sacred name of Jesus, who went about doing good. But under the blameless exterior, the most criminal and deadly purposes were concealed. It was a fundamental principle of the order. It was a fundamental principle of the order that the end justifies the means. By this code, lying, theft, perjury, assassination were not only pardonable but commendable. When they served the interests of the church, under various disguises, the Jesuits worked their way into offices of state, climbing up the councils of kings and shaping the policy of nations. They became servants to act as spies upon their masters. They established colleges for the sons of princes and nobles and schools for the common people, and the children of Protestant parents were drawn into the observances of popish rites. All the outward pomp and display of the Roman worship was brought to bear to confuse the mind and dazzle and captivate the imagination, and thus liberty for which the fathers had toiled and bled was betrayed by the sons. The Jesuits rapidly spread themselves over Europe, and wherever they went with their followers revival of popery. To give them greater power, a bull was issued reestablishing the Inquisition. Notwithstanding the general abhorrence which it was regarded even in Catholic countries, this terrible tribunal was again set up by popish rulers, and atrocities too terrible to bear the light of day repeated in its secret dungeons. Beloved, within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we see the Inquisition being reestablished in the American countries, in the United States of America, through wiretapping, through the Patriot Act, through spy agencies like the CIA spying on our cell phones, in the NSA wiretapping. These things are happening in these last days to warn Seventh-day Adventist Christians that the time of trouble is here. We see the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, meeting with the Pope now, as of today, recently, after his long tour in Israel and Syria and the other nation over there, Saudi Arabia. We see him praying at the Wailing Wall. We see him talking to the leader of Saudi Arabia. And now we see him going to see the Pope. Now, the Pope is a Jesuit. This Pope, Pope Francis, is a Jesuit. And he may assassinate Donald Trump if Donald Trump does not do what he tells him to do. As we already see, the Jesuits were outlawed by one of the popes during John Adams and Thomas Jefferson's time. And then they're reinstated after Thomas Jefferson and John Adams' time. And John Adams cried to Thomas Jefferson saying, I fear and alarm these people. They're like the gypsies, and they're a dangerous people. John Adams told Thomas Jefferson years ago in a letter there in the Library of Congress. Beloved, let me tell you something. Jesuits are no easy people to deal with. They're very dangerous. They spy on their masters. They kill people. They practice deception. They practice lying. You can't trust them, beloved. The Masonic Order, the Kiwanis, all these orders are linked up with the Eastern Star, with the Jesuits. They're all under the Jesuit order, beloved. I took spiritual information at Oakwood University years ago, and I passed it with a C. The classes changed the foundations of biblical spirituality when the Seventh-day Adventist leadership got wind that the name was making people feel uncomfortable about the class. What they did was they changed the name, but they teach fundamentally the same things in the class, allowing prayer candles and popish rites and making pictures of God, images of God, and using prayer beads. All these things come from Catholic traditions that the Jesuits instituted as a part of their worship. They say, down with the Bible, up with the beads and candles. We see the same situation of the candles as mentioned in spiritual information that's in a lot of our Seventh-day Adventist schools in these last days, like Oakwood and Andrews and Southern and Walla Walla and Loma Linda in the U.S. for our theology majors in La Sierra. We see it in this book called Great Controversy. This is what the Jesuits instituted for the worship of Christians that are Protestants, and what the Catholics believe too for their worship. The chapter is called The Apostasy, Great Controversy, illustrated this, and it says, the darkness seemed to grow more dense. Image worship became more general. Candles were burned before images, and prayers were offered to them. The most absurd and superstitious customs prevailed. The minds of men were so completely controlled by superstition that reason itself seemed to have lead its way, while priests and bishops who were themselves pleasure-loving, sensual, and corrupt, it would only be expected that the people would look to them for guidance, would sunken in ignorance and vice. So as you can see, prayer candles and beads was up and the Bible was down. Beloved, here's a scripture that describes the great horror of the apocalypse, the Roman Catholic Church, and what she will do. Here's the Bible, Revelation chapter 17. It explains why Donald Trump was meeting with the Pope and what he will do as him being a Jesuit, and how the Jesuits were going to destabilize all governments for them to worship the man of sin power in these last days. Revelation chapter 17 says this. It says, Revelation 17 says, this it says, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither. I will show unto you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. In the Bible, Jeremiah 6:2 says, I've likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. So in the Bible, a woman symbolizes a church. And a good church is Revelation 12, with the stars over her head and moon under her feet. But a great whore is an evil church, an apostate church. So this whore is none other than the Roman Catholic Church, Revelation 17, verse 1. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. What do we mean by fornication? We mean the union of church and state. All the nations have a union of church and state throughout the Holy Roman Empire, or the 1260 years of papal supremacy in Europe, when they cleaved together as the Holy Roman Empire. and what they will do again in these last days, have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. The wine of her fornication is the her apostate teaching, Sunday sacredness, immortality of the soul, eternal torment in hell, purgatory, infallibility of the Pope. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now 7 heads are the 7 phases of government she ruled over, or 7 kings she ruled over, and 10 horns of the 10 tribes of European nations she ruled over for 1260 years. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having her golden cup in her hand full of names of abominations, the filthiness of her fornication. This is the colors that many of her priests and prelates and cardinals and bishops wear when they come to worship in their churches, their local shrines and temples in the world. And upon her head was a name written, Mystery of Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. This means that she was the mother of all the apostate Protestant churches, like the Baptist, Lutheran, Episcopalian, Pentecostal. All these denominations are the apostate daughters of the Roman Catholic Church. They're the daughters of the harlot. The mother is the papacy. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now, she was drunk with the blood of the saints because she killed people like Jerome and Huss and all those Protestant reformers back in the 1200s years of papal supremacy. And she'll kill them again when the apostate Protestant world unites with the United States government and forms an image of the beast in the last days before probation closes. Could this be Donald Trump meeting with the Pope now, the Jesuit Pope Francis, be the beginning of the image of the beast being formed with the Johnson Amendment just being appealed recently by Donald Trump in the White House garden? Could this be the sign of the beginning of the end? Let me show you what the book Education states. This is the book Education by Sister White. I'm going to show you what she says on page 228, a chapter dealing with education and character. I must get this in as well, even though time is leading on and my time is almost up on this link. It deals with a chapter called Education and Character. Education and Character, page 228. This is the principle of the Jesuits and the apostate Protestants and new theologians within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. What they teach that brings the whole wide world to believe the heresies for these last days. Spiritualism asserts that men are all unfallen demigods, that each mind will judge itself, and true knowledge places men above all law, that all sins committed are innocent and whatever is right, and God doth not condemn. The basis human beings represents as in heaven and highly exalted there. Thus it declares to all men it matters not what you do, live as you please. Heaven is your home. Multitudes are thus said to believe that desire is the highest law. There is liberty and that man is accountable only to himself. This is why they believe in no victory over sin, like many of our new theologians and Adventist ministers teach. This is why they believe in Sunday sacredness, like some of our first Christians teach. This is why they believe in the immortality of the soul, like no matter how you live, you'll be saved, you go to heaven. These are all the things the Jesuits teach, and why they're trying to undo Protestantism, victory over sin, and great only by grace, not by works, and not only by faith, but they believe in works and faith, and penance, and purgatory and beads. Beloved, stand against the Jesuits, stand against the Roman Catholic Church, and ready for these last days. Maranatha.